Today I'm going to review Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. So this means I've now reviewed the first 10 movies from Motion Picture all the way to Nemesis, along with reviews of Star Trek Into Darkness and beyond. The only film I have not reviewed is Star Trek 2009, though I have spoken about that film in other videos numerous times. If you'd like me to review that film, just let me know, otherwise I don't think I'll bother. Regardless, I've created a playlist of my Star Trek review videos linked below for you to check out, so please have a look at that playlist. Now, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan was released in 1982 and was directed by a man who didn't know very much about Star Trek prior to coming on board the project, Nicholas Meyer. Meyer is often cited for bringing a new and refreshing energy and perspective to the Star Trek franchise, both in terms of direction and writing. Jack B. Sowards wrote the script based on a story outline by Harve Bennett, and Meyer rewrote the script uncredited. Though the story had gone through considerable alterations from Bennett's original outline, Bennett was the one who decided that the character of Khan Noonien Singh should be the film's primary villain, believing that the lack of a villain had been one of Star Trek the Motion Picture's failings. Bennett, who also had never seen the original series, brought Robert Sallin on board as producer, and he was tasked with producing The Wrath of Khan on a much smaller budget than Motion Picture. The budget was just $12 million, so sets, costumes, props, and even footage were repurposed and reused from Motion Picture. The opening space dock sequence is pulled straight from Motion Picture, albeit greatly shortened, and with James Horner's fantastic new soundtrack, it really feels quite different actually. The film was certainly made on a small budget by comparison to the first film. A significant amount of the film, incidentally, takes place on one primary set, which is the bridge of the Enterprise, which is reused as the Starfleet Academy simulator and also heavily redressed for the USS Reliant. Speaking of the Reliant, the ship was supposed to look like this, but Bennett had misread the design drawings and approved them upside down. Nicholas Meyer changed the look and feel of the film to be more nautical. This played into certain elements like a ship's bell, the more militaristic uniforms designed by Robert Fletcher, and the lighting of the ship as well. This film also introduced the boatswain's call, which is the whistle that's used during naval ceremonies. The Wrath of Khan had numerous previous titles, including The Vengeance of Khan and The Undiscovered Country, which would eventually be used in Star Trek VI, which Meyer also directed and co-wrote. In that film, The Undiscovered Country refers to the future, but in Star Trek II, The Undiscovered Country would have referred to death. The Undiscovered Country is, of course, a reference to Shakespeare's Hamlet. Following the mixed reviews for Star Trek the Motion Picture, Gene Roddenberry's role in the development and production of Star Trek II was greatly reduced. He was effectively sidelined to the position of executive consultant. He could do little more than observe the film's development and offer his opinions and notes, but his input didn't have to be acted upon by the filmmakers. He felt that Star Trek II didn't stay true to Star Trek's values. I have to say I disagree with him on this. Star Trek II is certainly a very different movie to the motion picture in terms of tone and also the fact that there's a lot more conflict and humanity with the characters. The Federation is even viewed with some skepticism and distrust by David Marcus when he says that scientists have always been the pawns of the military. This is an attitude that perhaps doesn't gel well with the utopian vision of Roddenberry's Star Trek future. But I have to say, I love both movies. I've grown to really appreciate the motion picture over the years. I actually really like the movie's atmosphere and pacing, vision, and cerebral orchestral qualities. But I do acknowledge it wasn't for everyone, and for some people it was just too slow and plodding. And Star Trek II is probably the superior movie in terms of story, drama, performance, character, and overall impact. Just like Star Trek First Contact, which I recently reviewed, Star Trek II is very much a complete science fiction film, where all of the various elements just came together extremely well. The film obviously follows up on the events of the original series episode Space Seed, which saw the introduction of the genetically enhanced character of Kahn, played brilliantly by Ricardo Montalban, who delivers an extremely Shakespearean and intense performance that drives the film. He just steals the show here. The film introduces us to the character of the Vulcan Savick, played by Kirstie Alley, though for later films she would be replaced by Robin Curtis. The film also introduces the Kobayashi Maru test, the no-win scenario from Starfleet Academy, which Admiral Kirk oversees in this film, to assess a new batch of officers in training. He does this for Captain Spock, the captain of the Enterprise. Kirk, on the other hand, is just not himself in the beginning of the film. He's feeling jaded and very much aware of his advancing years. He's frustrated with his work and feels he's not doing what he wants to be doing as captain of a starship. He feels he's getting old, kind of like a midlife crisis. And when McCoy comes to see him to celebrate his birthday over a drink, he can't help but remark on how Kirk is acting like it's his funeral. McCoy advises him to get his command back before he truly does become old, like his antique collection. Meantime, the USS Reliant is searching for a lifeless planet to test the new Genesis device on. The device terraforms planets super quickly. They visit Ceti Alpha 6 on a survey mission, or what they believe to be Ceti Alpha 6, but upon arrival, Chekhov and Captain Tyrrell are captured by Kahn's men, who've been living on the planet for over 20 years, since Captain Kirk marooned them there. Turns out this is Ceti Alpha 5. Ceti Alpha 6 exploded 6 months after the Enterprise left them there, and that shifted the planet's orbit slightly, turning it into an uninhabitable desert. Kahn wants to know why Chekhov and Tyrrell have come, and in a scene I always found terrifying as a kid, and still to this day it never ceases to disturb me, he uses an ear slug eel creature thing to burrow into their ears, and it wraps itself around their cerebral cortex. Delightful. Anyway, this allows Kahn to control them because they become susceptible to suggestion. Madness and death follow after that. With the Reliant now under his control, Kahn orders the scientists of Regula 1 to hand over the Genesis device and materials, so they can test it on Ceti Alpha 6, or rather 5. When Carol Marcus, Kirk's former flame and mother of his son, contacts Kirk to confirm why he gave these orders, the transmission is jammed at the source, so the Enterprise is assigned to investigate. Spock respectfully hands command of the Enterprise to Kirk, as his friend, and of course second in command. Kirk accepts and shows Spock and McCoy the classified Genesis materials, a video of how the torpedo can rapidly alter a planet and transform it into a habitable world. But it could also be used as a weapon. If fired on an already habitable world, it would also alter that one in the process, eradicating all life there, replacing it with, as Spock describes, its new matrix. The Genesis effect animation was state-of-the-art CGI for the time, and I think works very well as an animatic. What follows next is a fantastic sequence where the Enterprise and Reliant first meet. Kirk and crew are unprepared for an attack. Reliant refuses to return Enterprise hails. This is the scene where Kahn delivers that line about the Klingon proverb, "Revenge is a dish best served cold." The film is just so quotable. Kirk makes a big mistake here. He doesn't follow regulations and raise the shields as pointed out by Lieutenant Savick. As a result, the Reliant attacks, and it costs the lives of some of the young crew members aboard. Kirk really was caught with his britches down, and he's absolutely blown away when he sees Kahn on the view screen. I have to say, this is probably William Shatner's best performance as Kirk. Ultimately, this is a revenge story for Kahn, but this was at a time in science fiction cinema when that motivation hadn't been overdone like it has been today. And it's brilliantly executed here. The dynamic between Kirk and Kahn is phenomenal, and it's made all the more noteworthy because Ricardo Montalban and William Shatner don't actually appear in the same scene together. They only interact over view screen. Kirk tricks Kahn by transmitting the prefix code for the Reliant. I love the moment where Kirk puts on his glasses and he and Spock work together to lower the Reliant's shields. They hit the Reliant hard, and the music is just epic here. They head to Regula 1 and find that most of the scientists have been killed by Kahn, but Chekhov and Tyrrell have survived. Inside the Regula planetoid, Kirk and the landing party find the rest of the scientists in hiding. He's initially attacked by his son David and reunites with Carol, but that's cut short when Tyrrell and Chekhov betray them, under Kahn's mind control. They point their phasers at the landing party. They can't follow the orders to kill Kirk, and Tyrell kills himself instead. Chekhov's ear bug thing escapes from his ear. Kirk shoots it. Kahn beams up the Genesis device. And it's here where Kirk delivers the famous line, can't beat that. Kirk and Carol talk about David. Unlike Picard, from Picard Season 3, who didn't know he had a son, Kirk did know and agreed to stay away, given that his life in Starfleet just wouldn't have been ideal for a young boy growing up. Kirk confides in her, saying he's feeling old and worn out. She shows him the Genesis cave. Considering they're inside a planet, I have no idea where the sunlight is coming from. The Enterprise then beams them aboard, Spock and Kirk working brilliantly together once again, using coded communications to make Kahn believe the Enterprise needed 2 days for repairs instead of 2 hours. What follows is the epic climax of the film, the battle in the Mutara Nebula, which other Star Trek shows and indeed films have tried and failed to emulate with the same level of impact and intensity. Ultimately, Kirk outwits Kahn through sheer tactical experience and cunning. As Spock pointed out, Kahn's tactics seemed to suggest two-dimensional thinking, while Kirk was moving in 3 dimensions. Kahn launches the Genesis device, and Spock, after mind-melding with McCoy, sacrifices himself to repair the Enterprise in engineering, exposing himself to a lethal dose of radiation so that the ship can escape the explosion of the Reliant at warp speed. Ultimately, the Reliant and the Nebula are converted into the new Genesis planet. Kirk and Spock share an iconic final moment together in engineering, the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few or the one. Spock faces his own Kobayashi Maru test, having never taken it himself, and Kirk having cheated to avoid facing the no-win scenario of death. Spock says, "I have been and always shall be your friend." After Spock's funeral, where his body is torpedoed out into the Genesis planet, Kirk reconciles with his son David, who tells him how proud he is to be his son. The two men embrace. I think it makes it feel all the more painful that David is killed in the next film. The film closes with a final coda, a captain's log, and Kirk admitting that he feels young as they look out into the Genesis planet. Now, the final cut was changed to include Spock's torpedo soft landing on the planet, along with Leonard Nimoy's closing narration, Space, the Final Frontier. This was put in because initial test audiences reacted badly to the original ending, finding it too depressing. This change was something Nicholas Meyer didn't like, actually. At least the door was left open for Spock to return. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan ranks at the top of most Trek fans' list of favourite Trek movies, and indeed, many people's favourite sci-fi movies in general. It is a masterfully crafted and scripted movie, and is also a Trek film that has never been equalled in terms of its impact and legacy. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts on Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. The Dave Cullen Show is made possible by you, my generous subscribers. If you'd like to support my work, head on over to my Subscribe star, linked below in the description box, and for a pledge of as little as $1 per month, you can help to keep the show going. I'm also doing one-to-one monthly subscriber chats. Thanks again. Take care.